Imagine a chilling algorithm, that flags a potential serial killer years before law enforcement even takes notice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's the unsettling reality behind today's deep dive. We're looking into the case of Darren Deon Vann,
Okay.
an American serial killer, confessed to 7 murders, but suspected of, well, many more. And we'll be using, we're going to unpack court records, and we've got this fascinating New Yorker article
Oh, cool.
about the Murder Accountability Project,
Interesting.
a group dedicated to identifying potential serial killers using data analysis. So let's get into it.
All right. So, what's really fascinating about this is how this all kind of got started. We've got this former journalist, Thomas Hargrove, becomes fixated on unsolved murders.
Oh, wow.
Creates the Murder Accountability Project and develops an algorithm that scans crime data, searching for patterns that suggest serial killer activity. Things like geographic clustering, similar methods of killing, victim demographics.
Okay, so hold on. An algorithm that can predict serial killers? Like, how does that even work? What kind of data are we talking about?
Well, it sifts through massive data nets of homicide records, looking for, subtle connections that human investigators might miss.
Right.
It's especially useful in cases where individual police departments might not recognize a pattern because the murders span different jurisdictions. In Vann's case, the algorithm flagged Gary, Indiana, as a potential hotspot for serial killer activity, as far back as the 1980s.
The 1980s. So this algorithm was raising red flags like decades before Vann was even caught.
Exactly.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
And frankly, kind of terrifying.
It is. It is. Hargrove, along with a deputy coroner in Gary, actually identified 18 suspicious deaths that fit the algorithm's criteria. They presented this information to authorities, but their warnings were basically ignored.
So they had data pointing to a potential serial killer, and no one took action. Why?
Well, it seems there was a disconnect between the data-driven approach and traditional investigative methods. Law enforcement back then may not have been equipped or even willing to interpret this kind of algorithmic prediction and act on it. Tragically, it took the murder of 19-year-old Africa Hardy in 2014 for Vann to finally get on the radar of law enforcement.
And how did that happen? What led police to Vann?
So, Africa Hardy was found strangled in a Motel 6 in Hammond, Indiana.
Okay.
Police used her phone records and traced her last contact to Vann.
So a seemingly simple piece of technology, cell phone records, cracked the case open. It makes you wonder, what if they had access to and had trusted, that algorithm's predictions back in the 80s?
It's a haunting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit more later, but for now, let's focus on what happened, right after Vann's arrest.
I understand things took a pretty dark turn once he was in custody.
They did. Upon apprehension, Vann confessed to not only killing Hardy, but also to 6 other murders. And then he led police on this, grim tour of Gary, pointing out abandoned buildings where he had left the bodies of his victims.
So these abandoned buildings, they kind of become part of the story, right? Like part of the pattern the algorithm might have recognized.
Right.
It's chilling. So tell me more about the victims.
Yeah. So all of them were women. Aneth Jones, 35, Tiara Beatty, 28, Christine Williams, 36, she was a mother of 4, Tracy Martin, 41, Sonia Billingsley, 53, and Tanya Gatlin, 27.
Oh, wow.
These 7 women, their lives cut short, they really represent, the human cost of this tragedy. But Vann's confessions, they didn't stop there.
I get the feeling there's a lot more to unpack here.
Yeah.
What happened next? You mentioned that Vann's confessions didn't stop at 7 victims. What else did he reveal?
Well, in 2021, journalist Ben Kubrick obtained taped interviews through FOIA requests.
FOIA?
Yeah, the Freedom of Information Act, allows public access to government records.
Right.
And these tapes, they contained bombshell revelations.
Really?
Yeah, Vann confessed to, dozens of additional murders, spanning multiple states.
Oh, wow.
He listed locations like Chicago, California, North Carolina, Texas, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, even Minnesota, and Detroit, Michigan.
His potential victim count just exploded.
Yeah.
It's almost too much to process.
It is.
So we have this algorithm that potentially could have stopped him,
Right,
but wasn't fully utilized. And then these chilling confessions that expand the scope of his crimes far beyond what anyone initially imagined. What's being done to investigate these claims?
Well, law enforcement agencies all across the country are poring over cold cases,
Ah,
trying to match Vann's descriptions with unsolved murders.
wow.
It's like a massive undertaking,
Yeah.
almost like assembling a giant macabre puzzle
Right.
with pieces scattered across the country.
It's got to be incredibly difficult, not just logistically, but emotionally for the investigators
Mm.
and the families involved.
Oh, absolutely. Adding to the complexity is the fact that Vann himself was, often inconsistent in his accounts. Yeah, he would sometimes contradict himself or embellish details. It makes separating truth from fiction, so much harder.
Right.
It requires meticulous detective work, forensic analysis, and a deep understanding of, the criminal mind.
And the clock is ticking.
It is.
The more time passes, the colder these trails become. Are there any promising leads so far?
Well, the specific details of ongoing investigations are, often kept confidential.
Sure.
But I can say Vann's confessions have definitely reinvigorated a number of cold cases.
Okay.
And the use of DNA technology, which has advanced significantly in recent years, is proving really helpful in connecting the dots.
That's good to hear. It's encouraging to know that investigators are, using every tool they can to seek justice for these victims and their families. It makes you wonder, though, why would Vann confess to so many additional crimes, especially if he already avoided the death penalty?
That's a complex question with no easy answer. Some experts believe that serial killers confess to inflate their perceived notoriety, seeking a twisted form of fame, even from behind bars.
Oh, wow.
Others suggest it's a way for them to exert control, to continue manipulating the narrative even after they've been caught.
It's a disturbing thought.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the, deep psychological complexities of individuals like Vann.
It does.
Earlier, you mentioned that the algorithm flagged a pattern of targeting women and using abandoned buildings.
Right.
It reminds me of another serial killer, Benjamin Atkins, who did something very similar. What is it about these abandoned spaces that seem to attract this kind of darkness?
It is a chilling observation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Abandoned buildings offer like a sense of isolation, anonymity, almost like private stages for these horrific acts, allowing the perpetrator to feel a sense of control and power. They're also often frequented by vulnerable populations, individuals struggling with, addiction, homelessness, or mental health issues, making them easy targets for predators like Vann and Atkins.
It paints a really bleak picture, not just of the crimes themselves, but of the societal conditions that might, contribute to them.
Yeah.
These abandoned buildings, they're not just physical structures. They're like symbols of neglect, forgotten communities.
You're hitting on a really crucial point. The existence of these spaces and the vulnerability of, the people who inhabit them is a reflection of larger societal issues like poverty, inequality, and lack of access to resources.
It's a stark reminder that the fight against crime can't just be about catching criminals.
Yeah.
It also has to be about addressing the root causes
Yes.
that create the conditions for crime to flourish.
Precisely. It requires a multifaceted approach, that includes law enforcement, criminal justice reform, but also social and economic interventions, community development, and a commitment to creating, a more just and equitable society.
Okay, so we've talked about the horrifying details of Vann's crimes, the algorithm that could potentially prevented some of them, and the complex social and psychological factors that contribute to this kind of violence. But there's another layer to this story I want to explore.
Oh, okay.
The algorithm itself.
You're right. The algorithm is a crucial part of this whole narrative. It represents a potentially game-changing tool in the fight against serial killers.
Yeah.
A way to harness the power of data to protect vulnerable populations.
Exactly. So let's delve deeper into how this algorithm actually works. What are the key factors that it analyzes to identify these patterns?
Well, think of it like a digital detective.
Okay.
It analyzes data points like, victim demographics, age, race, gender, occupation, as well as details about the crime scene, location, method of killing, weapons used, any, signature behaviors. It looks for clusters of murders with shared characteristics that might suggest the work of, a single perpetrator.
So it's not just about the number of murders, but the specific details.
Right.
The unique patterns that link them together. It's connecting the dots, but on a massive data-driven scale.
Exactly. The algorithm excels at spotting these subtle connections, these telltale signs that might not be immediately obvious to human investigators. It acts as a force multiplier,
Sure.
augmenting human intuition with the power of computation.
It's an incredible example of how technology can be leveraged for good to protect the innocent and bring criminals to justice.
Mm.
But it also raises some important questions about the future of policing.
You're right. Vann's case highlights, both the potential and the challenges of using algorithms in law enforcement. It raises questions about how we balance the need for safety with the protection of, individual privacy and civil liberties. It's a delicate balance.
It is.
And one that we need to navigate carefully as we move further into this era of data-driven policing.
Absolutely. The use of algorithms in law enforcement is still in its early stages. And it's crucial that we engage in open and honest discussions about the ethical implications and potential pitfalls. We need to establish clear guidelines and safeguards to ensure that these tools are used responsibly and ethically.
It's a conversation that we need to have as a society.
We do.
To ensure that these powerful technologies are used to enhance justice, not to undermine it.
I couldn't agree more. The ultimate goal is to create a system that is both effective and just, one that leverages the power of technology while upholding the fundamental rights of all citizens. Okay, so with that, we'll move into the final part of our deep dive. When we return, we'll explore the psychological factors that might have contributed to Vann's horrific crimes and discuss the challenges of understanding the minds of serial killers. We'll also examine the broader implications of Vann's case and the potential for algorithms to, revolutionize the way we prevent and solve crime. Okay, so we've been unraveling this case of Darren Deon Vann.
Right.
A serial killer whose crimes were flagged by an algorithm years before his capture. We talked about the data, the investigation, those chilling confessions. But now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and try to understand the man behind the monster.
Okay.
What drove Vann to commit these horrific acts?
That's the question that has baffled criminologists and psychologists for ages.
Yeah.
Why do some individuals become serial killers? There's really no easy answer.
Yeah.
No single factor that explains this descent into darkness.
So there's no one-size-fits-all explanation.
Right. No, not really. It's usually a really complex mix of factors.
Okay.
But we can look at Vann's life, for some potential clues.
Yeah.
He had a troubled past. Remember the arrest for threatening his girlfriend, the other than honorable discharge from the Marines, the sexual assault conviction.
Right.
All these incidents, they kind of suggest a pattern of escalating aggression and disregard for others.
Yeah, those incidents, even though, they seem minor compared to murder,
Yeah.
they still matter.
Right. Yeah.
Because they reveal a potential trajectory, path towards violence.
Precisely. Each incident could be seen as a crack in the foundation,
Right.
weakening his ability to empathize, respect boundaries.
And you mentioned before that Vann fits the profile of a psychopath.
Yeah.
What does that mean in this context?
So a psychopath is someone who lacks empathy and remorse. They can be very charming and manipulative and often appear, totally normal. But underneath that facade is a profound emotional detachment. They don't experience guilt or shame the way most people do.
So someone like Vann, they could blend into society easily, appearing harmless, while harboring these dark impulses.
Exactly. That's what makes them so dangerous. They often fly under the radar, operating undetected for years because they're so good at manipulating others.
We've seen that play out tragically in Vann's case.
Yeah.
Are there any specific moments in his life that might have pushed him further down this path?
It's hard to say for certain.
Yeah.
But his conviction for sexual assault, back in 2007 could be a turning point.
Right.
She faced consequences. But instead of seeking rehabilitation, he seemed to just double down on his deviant behavior.
The punishment, it reinforced his sense of being outside the law.
Yeah.
Of being untouchable.
That's a possible interpretation, yeah. The criminal justice system, for some individuals, it might inadvertently validate their distorted worldview.
Right.
Instead of deterring them.
That's a sobering thought. It kind of leads us back to that question of prevention.
Yeah.
What can we do as a society to recognize and address these risk factors before they escalate into violence.
Well, it's a complex challenge,
Sure.
but we can focus on things like improving mental health services,
Okay.
especially for young people. Early intervention is key. We need to create like a safety net, a system of support that catches individuals before they fall through the cracks.
It's not just about like professional help, though, is it?
Right.
It's also about fostering a culture where it's okay to ask for help, to talk about mental health struggles, without shame.
You're absolutely right. We need to break down that stigma surrounding mental health, encourage open communication, and make support accessible.
So this case, while horrifying, it also kind of offers some valuable insights
Hmm.
into the potential of technology to combat crime
Right.
and the importance of addressing the underlying social and psychological factors that contribute to violence. What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, Van's case, it's a stark reminder that that evil exists in the world, but it also, showcases the power of human ingenuity to fight back. That algorithm that flagged him it's a testament to our ability to use data for good, to
Yeah.
to protect the innocent, and we must continue to invest in and refine these technologies to learn from cases like Van's and to work towards a future where such tragedies are prevented.
That's a powerful message of hope amidst the darkness.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing your expertise and insights with us today.
it's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the chilling case of Darren Deon Vann. Remember, knowledge is power. By understanding the complexities of crime, the motivations of those who commit it, and the tools we have to fight back, we can all contribute to a safer and more just world.